I pleaded with him to never cease. A genuine tale of betrayal. From the exterior, my existence in the suburbs appeared to be idyllic. A life that others looked upon with envy. In our residence, a magnificent and expansive house stood proudly, surrounded by a meticulously maintained lawn, while a crystal-clear pool glimmered invitingly beneath the gentle embrace of the sun. My husband, Mark, was a diligent and accomplished man, while our son, Jake, stood on the brink of graduation at the age of 21. To the outside observer, we embodied the very essence of joy. A family that others aspired to be. Yet, within the confines of that house, reality painted a picture far from idyllic. Mark devoted the majority of his hours to his job, and upon returning home, he seemed hardly aware of my presence. His focus was entirely absorbed by his phone or the television. The warmth that had once flourished between us now a distant memory. The man who once embraced me tenderly now scarcely cast a glance my way. As the days passed, the silence that enveloped us thickened, resembling a persistent fog that would not dissipate, leaving me to grapple with a sense of invisibility within the confines of my own marriage. Isolated in an existence that ought to have brimmed with richness. On a Saturday afternoon in the early embrace of summer, the winds of change began to stir. Jake extended an invitation to his closest companion for an afternoon of swimming. Jaylen, he had been visiting for months, consistently courteous and unfailingly respectful. Merely another boy in my eyes, until that fateful day. As I stood in the kitchen, rinsing the dishes at the sink, my gaze drifted toward the sliding glass doors that opened to our backyard. And there he stood. Jaylen lingered at the pool's edge, his skin shimmering beneath the bright midday sun, as beads of water cascaded down his smooth, flawless dark complexion. His physique was trim and vigorous, sinews taut with every motion. He plunged into the water with grace, emerging moments later, a broad, assured smile illuminating his face, showcasing a set of flawless white teeth. In that fleeting instant, my gaze was utterly captivated. It wasn't merely his physique or his grin that captivated me. There was something deeper at play, the manner in which he conducted himself, his self-assurance, his tranquility, in stark contrast to Mark's remote and fatigued demeanor. An unfamiliar feeling awakened within me, a sensation long dormant and forgotten. I compelled myself to return to the dishes, yet my hands quivered ever so slightly, and my thoughts incessantly drifted back to Jaylen. In the weeks that followed, Jaylen found himself at our house with increasing frequency. He and Jake spent their days in the garage, honing their skills, delved into video games until the stars twinkled above, and basked by the pool during those languid afternoons. Whenever Jaylen was close by, my senses heightened, and I became acutely aware of his presence. Each fleeting gaze, each word, each time his rich, resonant voice echoed throughout the home. On a sunlit afternoon, Jake dashed to the store, leaving Jaylen in his wake. As I stood in the kitchen, meticulously preparing dinner, he entered the room. "Mrs. Bennett, would it be all right if I took a moment to fetch some water?" he inquired. He smiled, that effortless, captivating smile that sent a flutter through my chest. "Thank you, Rachel." As he extended his hand toward the glass, our fingers lightly grazed against each other. It was a fleeting moment, transitory, yet it coursed through me with an unmistakable intensity. I stood still, caught in a moment of sheer disbelief. His words lingered in the atmosphere, laden with significance. My breath hitched. I was acutely aware that I ought to turn and leave, conclude with a final thought. However, I chose not to. I found myself paralyzed, attracted to him as a moth is to a flickering flame. Just as I was about to reply, Jake entered the room. The spell was shattered. Jaylen straightened, a familiar smile gracing his lips once more. "Thank you for dinner, Mrs. Bennett," he remarked, before departing alongside Jake. Yet, his words remained, echoing in the silence. And thus, the flame he had kindled within me burned on. The subsequent days melded into one another. Secretive looks exchanged in silence. Ephemeral caresses. Hands moved swiftly in the kitchen, neither of us willing to retreat. As we brushed past each other in the hallway, our arms lightly touched, igniting a cascade of shivers along my spine. I found myself treading a perilous path. With each attempt to push him away, I felt an undeniable pull towards him. On a tranquil afternoon, Jake ventured out to complete his errands. Jalen lingered in the shadows. As I lounged on the patio, savoring my iced tea, he made his entrance. "Do you mind if I take a seat?" he inquired. "Certainly not," I responded. For a time, we lingered in quietude, the melodic chirping of birds intertwined with the distant hum of traffic, creating a symphony that enveloped the space between us. Then he uttered his words. "There's something about you that feels changed these days. Is everything all right?" There was a moment of uncertainty. There's simply so much swirling in my thoughts. If there is anything I can assist with. His voice faded into silence, yet the meaning lingered unmistakably in the air. As I gazed upon him, truly gazed, a profound change stirred within me. It had transcended mere attraction. It was a deep yearning, a yearning to rediscover the essence of vitality. That fateful night was destined to unfold. Mark and Jake attended a baseball game in the city. The silence in the house was strikingly profound, a stillness that invites your mind to meander into perilous realms. Jaylen lingered, asserting that baseball was not to his liking. I had not given it a second thought. A sense of relief washed over me. A fragment of my being was engulfed in fear. As I lounged on the couch, a book lay open in my lap, its words blurring into an indecipherable haze. It was then that Jalen emerged in the doorway, a shadowy figure framed by the soft glow of the dim hallway light. "Do you mind if I join you?" he inquired. "Indeed," I murmured softly. He took a seat next to me, more intimate than we have ever been. The atmosphere surrounding us shimmered with an electric intensity. "You appear to be anxious," he remarked gently. "I'm doing well, though that's not entirely true." He extended his hand, gently retrieving the book from my grasp and placing it aside. "Rachel, there's no need for pretense between us." The sound of my name on his lips, devoid of any pretense, sent a shiver racing down my spine. I pivoted to meet his eyes, my determination crumbling beneath the intensity of his stare. "I can't," I whispered. "You can," he replied, steady and assured. "I sense that you share this feeling as well." In that instant, my thoughts came to a halt. Ceased to fret. A moment passed between us, heavy with unspoken emotions. In a moment of weakness, our emotions crossed a line that shouldn't have been breached. Weeks of repressed longing surged within us, overwhelming all else. His presence felt overwhelming, stirring something I hadn't felt in years. I surrendered to him, losing myself in the sensations he evoked within me. The emotional boundary between us blurred beyond repair. The identical location, countless solitary nights passed as I pondered whether Mark even acknowledged my existence any longer. Yet, at this moment, someone has indeed taken action. I pulled my hand back swiftly, praying he hadn't caught the way my breath caught in my throat. "Apologies for that," he let out a gentle laugh. "It's fine," I murmured, a flush creeping up to my cheeks. Once he exited the room, I lingered for a considerable time, propped against the counter, my heart racing. What was unfolding within me? In my 40s, I found myself navigating the complexities of life as a married woman. Yet there I stood, flushed with the innocence of youth, captivated by someone half my age. As the night deepened and the house fell silent, I found myself sitting alone by the pool. The moonlight danced upon the water's surface, its gentle ripples reflecting the turmoil brewing within me. I endeavored to persuade myself that it was innocuous, merely a fleeting infatuation destined to diminish with the passage of time. Yet, beneath the surface, I was aware of the truth. An undeniable connection lingered in the air between us. There exists a truth that lingers in silence, palpable yet unarticulated. It filled me with dread. I vowed to set those emotions aside. I held the role of a wife, a nurturing figure. I possessed a family that needed safeguarding. Yet, as I committed to that promise, a soft murmur lingered in the recesses of my thoughts, persistently questioning, what if? I attempted to dismiss the magnetic draw I sensed toward Jaylen. It lay hidden beneath the monotony of everyday existence, yet he rendered it utterly unattainable. His presence permeated every nook and cranny of our abode. The sound of his laughter reverberated against the walls. His presence hung in the atmosphere, a haunting echo that remained long after he had departed the space. A week following that fateful night by the pool, circumstances began to shift. Jake and Jalen engaged in a spirited game of basketball in the driveway, their shirts discarded in the sweltering summer heat. I had drawn back the living room window to invite a breath of fresh air inside. Their light-hearted exchanges danced through the air, yet my gaze remained fixated on Jalen. His form glided with an ease that seemed almost otherworldly. As the task came to a close, Jake dashed indoors to retrieve an item from his room, leaving Jalen solitary on the porch, a bottle of water in hand. He discovered my gaze upon him. He offered a smile. It was more than a mere courteous grin. It was a profound understanding. It felt as though he could peer directly into my soul. My heart pounded in my chest as I swiftly averted my gaze, feigning interest in the laundry I clutched tightly. "What a lovely day it is, wouldn't you agree?" Jalen's voice caught me off guard. He stood just outside the window now, leaning effortlessly against the frame. "Indeed, it is," I responded, battling to maintain a steady tone. "It would be delightful to see you outside more often, Mrs. Bennet." "Bask in the sunlight," he urged. His tone danced lightly, yet beneath it lay an elusive depth, a quality I struggled to identify. "I'm perfectly content in this spot, but I appreciate your concern," I responded, managing a smile before redirecting my gaze once more. Yet his words lingered in my mind. It wasn't merely the content of his words, but the manner in which they were delivered. A challenge, indeed. As the evening unfolded and I tidied up the remnants of dinner, Jalen re-entered the kitchen once more. "Do you need any help?" he inquired, his voice barely above a whisper. "No, I've got it," I said, steering clear of his eyes. Yet he remained. He rested against the counter, his gaze fixed on me with a fervor that sent shivers down my spine. "You work too hard," he murmured softly. I halted, a plate lingering in my grasp. It had been years since anyone had uttered words like that to me. "It's simply my way," I replied with a slight shrug. "Perhaps it's time for someone to look after you for once." As dawn approached, guilt slinked in like an unwelcome shadow. That night, I stayed awake, grappling with emotions I could no longer ignore. "This cannot occur once more," I murmured softly. Yet, as the words escaped my lips, a part of me remained unconvinced. "I doubt you truly believe that," Jalen responded with a serene demeanor. He gently swept a lock of hair away from my face. "Rachel, you deserve to feel seen and valued." His words caressed my aching heart, yet they failed to dispel the guilt that had begun to take hold. In the weeks that followed, we continued seeing each other in secret, even as the weight of guilt grew, hidden from the prying eyes of the world, seizing fleeting instances while Jake was away, during the hours when Mark toiled into the night. The excitement of it all heightened the experience. Yet, it also instilled a sense of paranoia within me. The initial fissure appeared when Mark discovered Jalen's hoodie casually thrown over a chair. "Did Jalen leave this here?" he inquired. "Indeed," I responded in haste. Following the meal, Mark arched an eyebrow, yet remained silent. Yet I found myself unsettled. How much longer can we maintain this charade before someone catches on? The response arrived more swiftly than I had anticipated. The sun bathed the world in a gentle warmth, typical of a serene Sunday afternoon. In the backyard, laughter echoed as Jake and Jalen shared a moment of joy. Mark perused the channels in the living room, his fingers dancing over the remote control. With a facade of normalcy, I arranged the table for dinner. Yet, everything was amiss. I had traversed a boundary that could never be undone. The burden of my secret bore down on me, suffocating in its intensity. As dusk settled, Mark ventured outdoors to answer a call. Jake was upstairs, cleansing himself after their invigorating swim. In the quiet solitude of the kitchen, it was just Jalen and me. The atmosphere was charged with intensity. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered. He advanced with measured intent. "Surely you can't be serious." "I do," I insisted, though my voice quivered with uncertainty. "This is incorrect, Jalen." It must come to an end. Just as he was about to respond, the back door swung open. Mark entered the room. His gaze darted back and forth between Jalen and me. Then they became more focused. "What is happening here?" he inquired. In an instant, the delicate equilibrium I had meticulously maintained started to unravel.